Some NBA players make hundreds of thousands of dollars, while others make tens of millions, and the best among them make hundreds of millions. For instance, there are more than 31 players currently signed to a contract worth more than $100 million. Players like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Damian Lillard, Steph Curry, Rudy Gobert, and Paul George are currently signed to a contract worth more than $200 million. Yes, people scream and complain often that the money they pay these athletes is outrageous, but that's just the way things are. You're probably thinking right now that with that kind of money flowing into their bank account, they and their children would never have to worry about anything for the rest of their lives, but that's not quite the truth. More than 60% of NBA players file for bankruptcy only 2 years after retiring. It sounds crazy, but it's true. So how do these players end up becoming homeless and owing millions of dollars in debt? Well, it's because you haven't liked or subscribed to our channel. Okay, it's probably not because of that, but before we get into the reasons, if you want to win a PS5 with NBA 2K22 and Madden NFL 22 included, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications to enter our giveaway. There are many reasons why NBA players go broke, despite the fact that many of them earn 3 times more than the average or regular middle-class American earns in his entire lifetime. But NBA players aren't regular people or your random middle-class American. They live a life in front of the media, in front of spotlights, magazines, and all those things. So they have to live up to that profile, and that means owning luxurious cars, houses, sending their children to expensive schools, and so on. This self-depraved ego and pride is one of the first reasons they go broke easily. Many NBA players come from terrible backgrounds where they went days without anything to eat and had to wear the same pair of clothing every day of their lives. As teenagers or kids living that kind of life, you can only imagine the kind of trauma, shame, and embarrassment they had to put up with. For that reason, they kept dreaming, striving hard, and putting in a lot of hard work and time to hone their skill and talent to play professionally in the NBA. Of course, passion for the sport is one of them, but many of these players were more hungry for the money that comes with the success rather than the number of games they rack up. So these kids eventually get drafted into the NBA and go from owning nothing to owning absolutely everything. And that kind of money is enough to drive anyone insane. A level of insanity that would later drive them into losing all their money and going back to nothing. I can't even imagine how these players must feel though, going from rock bottom to the top of the world and then back to bottom again. That's the kind of trauma that makes you mentally unstable. This could be as a result of partying, gambling, buying luxurious clothing, jewelries, houses, and generally just having the fun of their lives. If there's any player in the NBA that fits this profile of how both ego and an extravagant lifestyle drives NBA players to hell, it's Latrell Sprewell. Today, he's mostly remembered for choking his head coach because the coach had famously wanted him to put a little mustard in his passes.
A spree to leave practice, and he didn't, and the words kind of escalated to some physical contact, and then later on in practice, 15 or 20 minutes later, Spree returned and there was some more physical contact.
Nevertheless, Sprewell was a talented player who could contribute both on offense and defense. During his 13-year career in the NBA, Sprewell earned a total of $97 million, just $3 million shy of $100 million. However, within just a few years of retirement, Sprewell was so broke that he didn't have a place to sleep or call his home. Who knows, Sprewell wouldn't have found his life in that state if he didn't allow his ego to stand in the way of his judgment. Ever heard the phrase, "I got a family to feed"? Well, that's what Sprewell said after he rejected a $21 million 3-year deal the Timberwolves offered him. It's funny that Sprewell thought he should be earning more than that, even though his current contract at the time was $14.6 million. After rejecting that offer, Sprewell never received another offer in the NBA, and that was the end of his NBA career. Sprewell was also an extravagant spender, and he owned several vehicles that most of us can only dream of owning, including a yacht and other mansions. But less than 3 years later, his failure to sign that deal and his ego caught up with him. He lost all his mansions, all his cars, his prized yacht, and all the money in his account. There are so many other NBA players like Sprewell who let their ego blind them, and it resulted in losing everything they ever owned. Another reason is that most of these players suddenly feel that because they're earning enough, they're financially responsible for their friends and family. It's always a great thing to support a close friend or an extended family, especially if they come from awful backgrounds. But the career of an athlete is short, and so is his money too. Even when they suffer a career-ending injury or retire, these athletes still continue to fend for their family even though it's draining them financially. That's because even when they start running broke, they wouldn't want to say it on time. The question is, at this point, who helps them? All these people disappear or still keep asking for more? A great example of how trying to provide for everyone else but yourself can leave you in ruins is Antoine Walker. Walker was one of the famous stars in the NBA who earned more than $100 million in the course of his career. But just 2 years after retiring from the NBA, Walker filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in 2010. So what happened? Walker came from a poor background, and that included many of his friends and family members too. So Walker decided to make it his job to make the life of his family members and friends better by providing for all their basic needs. Every time Walker bought himself a house or a car or some luxurious wristwatch, he made it a habit to provide the same things or similar things to his people at home. He became the modern-day Father Christmas, giving out his money freely without questions, and becoming a breathing ATM for his friends and family.
Well, we went on lavish trips. I mean, we would go on vacation together. We would go to Cancun. We would go to Puerto Rico. We would go, different places throughout the United States. And I would travel with a big group of guys. I would travel with 8 to 10 people with me and pay for their flights, hotel rooms, eating on the road. So you had those combination of things. We used to have real big bills at the end of those trips.
Antoine isn't the only NBA member that went broke because he wanted to make sure his family had a better life, and he sure won't be the last. NBA players spend their entire life training to be basketball players and not business or financial managers. So it's not uncommon to hear NBA players making very costly investments that yield nothing, both due to their ignorance and the quack people that they have behind them as financial advisors. NBA players are also targets of scams by people trying to pitch potential business opportunities or a so-called once-in-a-lifetime opportunity every month. And many of them fall for these traps, scams, lies that they end up losing a whole lot of money. A very good example is the story of how Peggy robbed Dennis Rodman and other athletes blind, leaving them with practically nothing. Dennis met Peggy through a mutual friend sometime in 2000, and they became very close. Peggy and Dennis stole the headlines in 2013 by becoming the first Americans to travel to North Korea and meet leader Kim Jong-un. Dennis was making a lot of money from his media appearances, but he realized that the money wasn't flowing into his account as it should, and he confronted Peggy about it. She blamed it on his excessive spending habits and told him that he couldn't be trusted with his own money. He gave her full control of his bank account, and then she cut off his access to a debit card. The drama began to unravel about a year later when Dennis was threatened with contempt of court for missing 4 months of child support payments to his first wife. And that's when things started to really get spicy. Dennis knew that Peggy was supposed to be handling that, so if she wasn't doing that, what was she doing with his money? He wanted answers and wanted them fast, so he started doing some digging. He later found that not only was Peggy spending his money under different names, but she was also controlling 85 bank accounts and living off other people's money. He also found out that she lied about her degree in Harvard Business School and Harvard Law School and about being a broker on Wall Street. But that's not all. Things got even worse when Dennis found out that Peggy had been using his name to launder money and was committing other serious crimes. She was later convicted and sent to prison, but Dennis never recovered his money. Dennis Rodman is just one of the so many NBA players who get scammed by people trying to milk their pocket in the name of one business or investment. And because these NBA players don't have enough knowledge or ideas about these things, they fall prey to their scams. Some of them fall because at the latter end of their career, they realize they need to invest and they start hurrying to invest in one business idea or the other that would bring in quick cash, only for them to end up making bad decisions and losing all their money. Funny thing is, some NBA players might watch this and still fall prey to these things.
These horror stories are gonna vanish.
What's up?
They're gonna vanish because the information, these athletes are way smarter now. You now get a chance to learn from the people that got done really wrong. And so you put yourself in a position so it doesn't happen to you. Today's athlete is so very advanced. I see these horror stories going away.
Many NBA players get overwhelmed by the change of setting, environment, and the comfortable life that comes with having so much money. This can lead to unwanted pregnancies or wanted pregnancies and even marriage just right after their career starts off. Being a daddy or being married sounds nice and sweet, except that it comes at a price. A very expensive price, actually. 7 out of 10 NBA players end up divorcing their first wife within the first 4 to 6 years of marriage. And in a situation where no prenup was signed, divorce can be extremely expensive. On the other hand, NBA players that have baby mamas end up paying a ridiculous amount of money for child support. Most players can afford these expenses, especially child support while they are still playing or are under contract. That's because there's still a regular flow of income. But when they retire or are unable to get another contract, they can quickly run broke just from the payment of child support.
Find one woman, love her, have kids with her, and build your family. Because having kids by multiple women can destroy your life. I've been having 3 out of my 5 trying to destroy my life since the beginning of time. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I pay millions in child support and still don't see my kids. to be smarter, bruh. Don't make the same mistakes I made.
A good example is the PJ Washington scandal going on right now. PJ Washington, who plays for the Hornets, thought he had met the love of his life when he met Brittany Renner, and he married her, but little did he know that she had other things in mind, and for her, it wasn't all love and paradise. It was a game. Just 2 weeks after giving birth to their baby, Renner secretly filed for divorce and is reportedly set to earn $200,000 every month, which is half of what PJ's salary is. PJ is still on his rookie contract, but just imagine he doesn't get signed by any NBA team again. He would file for bankruptcy in less than 3 months. Brittany isn't the first woman to do that to an NBA player either, and she definitely won't be the last.
None of them use condoms, really. So if y'all really want to try to come up off a check off a man, I mean, you could just fuck an athlete. They're really dumb.
In fact, there's probably some lady somewhere doing the same thing right now and hoping to get pregnant for an NBA player so that she can be earning free money through child support. It's funny because this has been happening for as long as I can remember, yet NBA players still keep falling for it. Well, what can you say? Never underestimate the power of a woman. What most NBA players fail to understand or realize is that they have a short career span. Their career won't last forever, and it could end at any moment. It could be a crazy scandal or an injury they'll never recover from, or anything devastating really, and poof, your career is over. Yet many of them tend to think that their careers would somehow last forever and the dough would always keep coming. So they keep spending without taking a cautious and respectful approach to their finances in order for it to last a lifetime. Just one big contract, if managed wisely, can see a player for the rest of his career. Instead, after retirement, many of them often panic and end up making rash and ridiculous choices that would ruin their finances forever. Many NBA stars go home thinking that the hard work stops when they leave the court or when the ball stops bouncing. But that's when the real work and journey to financial freedom begins. Despite all that we've talked about, it's also nice to note that not all NBA players are doomed to become bankrupt at some point in their life or in just a few years after their retirement. There are many examples of former NBA players who got it right and handled their money and business extremely well. Shaquille O'Neal is a great example of that. The mighty Shaq owns several businesses that provide great returns, and that's because of the amount of time and effort that he put into making the right investments. That's not to say that everyone would be as lucky as Shaq was with his investment even if done correctly. Still, there's a good chance that if the money is managed correctly, they will be comfortable for the rest of their careers.